The saloon doors slammed wide, dust riding the wind in with Cole Everett's boots. Laughter roared through the smoky room, whiskey burning throats, the piano clanging out a tune that couldn't be heard over the noise. Dice hit the table. Coins rattled in greedy hands. The men leaned in close, their voices sharp as broken glass. "Bet you won't," one cowhand sneered, shoving a shot glass toward Cole. "Bet I will." Cole fired back, his grin flashing white through the haze. Another man slapped the table, hard enough to rattle every empty bottle. "Then prove it. Prove you're not just another rich man's son hiding behind cattle and coin. Ride out there tonight. Ride to the widow's place." The laughter stilled for a breath, as though even the smoke held its tone. The widow, Clara Danning. Her name dropped heavy, like iron in the room. The piano stopped, the player's hands hovering over keys, uncertain. Cole let the silence linger. He leaned on the bar, eyes narrow, jaw tight. He was no coward, and he'd die before being called one. "And what's the prize?" he asked, his voice even, daring them all to doubt him. "The prize," the man said with a grin, "is the story itself. That a man as bold as Cole Everett laid with a widow who sleeps in shadows." More laughter, nervous this time, but it spread anyway. Men slapped the tables, pounding fists, shouting for the dare to be taken. Cole tossed back his whiskey, the fire burning down his throat, and slammed the glass upside down on the bar. "I'll go," he said. The room erupted again, but no one missed the shift in the air. For all the jeers and goading, none of them would have ridden out there themselves. Clara Danning's house sat at the edge of the desert, where the land fell into canyons and the wind whistled like the dead. They told stories, her husband's ghost walking the halls, her eyes watching from behind curtains, secrets buried in the dirt where no preacher's hand had blessed. But Cole Everett, proud rancher's son, strode out anyway. His spurs clinked sharp in the dark. The horse stamped impatiently as Cole mounted. The desert stretched wide under a rising moon, pale light cutting long shadows from the saguaros. Coyotes yipped in the distance, their cries riding on a dry wind. Cole pulled his coat tighter, the whiskey's warmth thinning too quick against the chill of night. Behind him, the saloon's yellow lanterns glowed, voices still echoing faint through the batwing doors. Ahead, only silence, save for the scrape of hooves on gravel. He rode steady, the weight of the dare pressing heavier with each mile. The desert smelled of dust and sage, every breath raw in his chest. The wind carried whispers, or maybe that was just the men's laughter still rattling in his skull. The house came into view slow, half hidden against a rise of rock. Its shutters clattered against the boards, the roof sagging under years of desert storms. One lantern burned inside, weak and flickering, throwing thin light across the yard. The fence lay broken in places, the gate hanging by one hinge. Cole slowed his horse, his throat dry. He told himself it was just a house, just a woman, just a dare. He'd walk in, charm her, bed her, and ride back with the story those fools wanted to hear. Simple as that. Yet his hands gripped the reins tighter. His father's voice echoed in memory. "Everett men never back down, boy. Not from cattle, not from guns, not from women." Cole dismounted, boots crunching over dirt and gravel. The horse snorted, tossing its head like it knew better. Cole tied it to the post, though the rope hung slack, useless against the desert wind. He climbed the porch steps. They groaned under his weight. His knuckles rapped once on the weathered door. The sound carried, hollow and sharp, into the still night. For a moment, nothing. No stir of movement, no voice answering. Just the creak of the shutters, the moan of wind through canyon cracks. Then a scrape, slow and deliberate from within. Footsteps across wooden floorboards. The door eased open, lantern light spilling over Cole's boots. She stood there, Clara Danning, black dress, simple but unyielding, sleeves brushing her wrists, collar high against her throat. Hair pinned back, streaks of silver catching the lamplight. Her eyes dark, steady, sharp as barbed wire. "You've ridden far, Mr. Everett," she said, her voice even, neither surprised nor warm. Cole tipped his hat, masking the quick thud of his heart. "Evenin', ma'am." thought I might pay my respects." Her gaze held him a moment too long, as if she could see the dare written plain across his face. Then, with a small motion, she stepped aside. "Then come in. The night grows cold." The air inside was thick with the scent of old wood and dust, faintly touched by lavender. The lantern's glow brushed over shelves lined with books, a rocking chair still as stone, curtains drawn tight against the world outside. Cole stepped in, boots heavy on the boards. The door closed behind him, the sound final, like a gavel struck. He forced a smile. "You live out here all alone?" Her lips curved faint, but not with mirth. "Alone," she said, pouring the word like something bitter. She gestured toward the table, and he sat, though his chest tightened with each breath. The clock ticked slow on the mantel. The house seemed to listen. Clara set 2 glasses down, filling them from a dark bottle. Her hands were steady. Her eyes, sharper still, never left his face. "To company," she said, raising her glass. Cole mirrored her, swallowing back the taste of fear. And though he drank, though he smiled, though he wore the mask of a man untouched by ghosts, something in her gaze unsettled him. A weight pressed on the air, heavy as judgment. The dare had led him here, but the night whispered otherwise. The night whispered that Clara Danning had been waiting. The clock ticked louder with each breath, its hands dragging through silence like spurs over stone. Cole shifted in his chair, glass heavy in his hand, the liquor warming his throat but not his nerves. Clara sat opposite, her posture unbent, her eyes never leaving him. The lantern between them swayed faintly, its flames stretching shadows across the walls. "You came on a dare," she said, her voice even, as though she were stating the weather. Cole's smile faltered. He set the glass down slow, the rim clinking against wood. "Folks talk too much." "Men always talk too much," she answered, folding her hands before her. Her rings caught the light. Simple bands, worn thin by years, one finger bare where a ring once sat. The floorboards creaked in the corner. Wind pressed against the shutters, making them rattle like bones in a box. Somewhere outside, a coyote cried, its voice stretched thin through canyon walls. Clara leaned forward, her shadow falling long across the table. "They dare you to ride here, to walk into my house, thinking it's a game. But you and I both know games end with a reckoning." Cole straightened, his jaw tightening. "I didn't ride out here for a reckoning. Just thought I'd share a drink with a neighbor." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something sharper, knowing. "Your family never thought of me as neighbor." The words landed heavy, pulling the air down with them. Cole opened his mouth to speak, but found no words waiting. His fingers drummed once against the glass, a hollow sound in the silence. She stood then, rising tall though the years had bowed her frame little. She moved to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to glance at the dark horizon. The lantern glow traced the lines of her profile, strength carved from grief, beauty worn like steel. "I buried my husband under that mesquite tree," she said softly, eyes fixed beyond the glass. "Every dawn, the sun strikes that soil red, as if it remembers the blood that fell." Cole's breath caught, though he hit it quick. The whiskey soured in his mouth. He shifted, his boots scraping against the boards. Clara turned, her gaze cutting through him. "You were your father's jaw, Mr. Everett. You ride the land he stole. You think I wouldn't know the bloodline of a man who left me widowed?" Cole felt the weight of the room shift, pressing against his chest. He swallowed hard, voice rough. "You're talking about old history. My father's been in the ground near a decade." Her lips curved into something not quite a smile. "The dead don't bury the truth." She walked back to the table, slow, deliberate, the hem of her dress whispering across the floorboards. She sat again, her eyes locking to his with the patience of a hunter who's waited years for her prey. Cole forced a laugh, though it cracked at the edges. "So what then? You lure me in with stories, make me squirm? That your idea of revenge?" Her hand slid across the table, not toward him, but to the lantern. She turned the wick down, dimming the flame until the room swelled with shadow. Her voice came low, steady, each word striking like a hammer. I don't tell stories, Mr. Everett. I carry truths, and you sit in the heart of one now. The silence stretched, broken only by the wind clawing at the house, the faint squeak of the rocking chair moving though no hand touched it. Cole's breath grew shallow, his shoulders stiff as stone. Clara leaned closer, her eyes gleaming in the weak glow. Your father sent men to kill mine. Over cattle, over dirt, over greed. He thought no one would remember. But I do, and I've waited. Cole felt the blood drain from his face. His hand twitched toward the glass again, but he pulled back before touching it. His voice came harsh, stripped of swagger. You've got no proof, just words in the dark. Her answer was a whisper, but sharp as a blade. Proof sits in the ground beneath that mesquite tree. Bullets don't rot. The lantern flickered, shadows lunging across the walls like ghosts. Cole's pulse hammered, loud as hoofbeats in his ears. He tried to steady himself, tried to summon the careless grin he wore so easily in the saloon, but it wouldn't come. Clara's gaze softened, not with mercy but with clarity. You think you came here for a dare. You came because fate brought you. The Everett name carries more than coin and cattle. It carries sins, and those sins ride on you now. The house groaned as the wind pressed harder, the shutters banging like fists demanding entry. Cole pushed back from the table, the chair legs scraping sharp. He stood, hands clenched, his voice low. I didn't kill your husband. No, she said, rising slow to match his height. But you carry his killer's name, and names bind tighter than rope. The clock struck, its chime echoing through the room like a bell tolling a grave. Cole flinched, though he masked it quick, his breath ragged. Clara moved past him, toward the mantel. She lifted a small wooden box, its lid worn smooth, its lock broken long ago. She opened it, the hinge squealing. Inside lay a revolver, its steel dulled with age but oiled with care, wrapped in a black cloth. She held it with both hands, cradling it like scripture. This, she said, her voice steady as stone, is the gun that ended him. The gun your father's men carried when they came for mine. Cole's throat closed. His hand brushed against the table edge, knuckles white. Clara's eyes never wavered. And now it waits. For justice. For truth. For the day Everett Pride walks through my door and finds me still standing. The lantern sputtered, the flames stretching high, then shrinking low. Cole stood frozen, his chest tight, the walls pressing close. And in that silence, the weight of her words settled over him like desert night. Inescapable, merciless, and final. The revolver gleamed dully in Clara's hands, the lantern's faint flame crawling over its barrel. Cole's breath hitched as she laid it flat on the table, metal clinking against wood. The silence around it was heavy, as if even the wind outside bent low to listen. That gun, she said, her fingers resting light against the grip, spoke the last word my husband ever heard. Cole stared, jaw clenched, sweat cutting cold lines down his temple. You can't know. I was there. Her voice cut him short. I heard the boots on the porch, smelled the whiskey on their breath, saw the glint of that iron before the shot split the night. Your father's men didn't come with masks. They came with the arrogance of Everett Pride. Her hand slid the revolver closer to him. The scrape echoed, sharp in the stillness. Cole pushed back a step, but the walls seemed to close around him. His voice came raw, strained. I wasn't there. I had no part in it. Clara's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but with the weight of truth. Yet you live on the land they stole. You drink from the well he dug. You carry their sins, whether you claim them or not. The floorboards groaned beneath Cole's restless shifting. He wanted to move, to turn, to breathe free air, but her words held him pinned tighter than rope. The old clock ticked, each second a nail driven deeper. Clara stepped around the table, her shadow stretching long. She stood close, her presence sharp as a blade. Do you know what it is to bury love in dry earth? To lay him down where the mesquite roots drink his blood, and rise every morning knowing no lawman, no preacher, no neighbor will speak his name again. Cole's lips parted, but no sound came. He saw her face, not fury, but something colder, endurance carved over years, grief hammered into steel. Her voice lowered, carrying the tone of a curse. I waited. Seasons passed, cattle came and went, storms washed the dirt from the grave, but I never moved, because I knew one day an Everett would walk through my door, and when he did, he would hear what the desert never forgot. The lantern flickered hard, shadows leaping like restless spirits. Cole's fists trembled at his sides. "What do you want from me?" Her gaze fixed him steady. "Truth, spoken by your tongue, not mine. Tomorrow the town will hear it. You'll stand before them, not as your father's son, but as a man willing to strip lies from his bloodline." Cole's head shook before he knew it, words tumbling quick, panicked. "You're a skin me to damn my family's name. Everything my father built. Built on bones," she snapped, the sharpness cracking the air like a whip. Her hand slammed the table, the revolver rattling. "Cattle bought with blood. Land fenced with death. And you call that building?" The wind howled against the shutters, rattling nails in their frames. The horse outside stamped, restless, pulling at its rope. Clara's hand lifted the revolver, not aiming, only holding. The weight of it filled the room, more than any bullet ever could. "You have a choice, Cole Everett. You can leave here tonight and let the lies rot in silence. Or you can stand in the morning light and let the truth bleed out where all can see." His chest heaved, breath uneven. He thought of the saloon, of men's laughter, of the dare that brought him here. How small it seemed now, how foolish, against the storm inside this widow's walls. Cole's voice broke low, hoarse. "If I speak, I'll lose everything." Her reply was quiet but final. "If you don't, you've already lost." The clock struck again, its chime hollow as a grave. Cole flinched, the sound echoing in his bones. He turned away, pacing toward the window, but the curtain blocked all view, thick and impenetrable. He pressed his palm to the cloth, the chill seeping through. Behind him, Clara's voice carried steady. "You think silence keeps you safe, but silence is just another kind of guilt. My husband's blood isn't washed away by your father's coffin. It clings still to land, to name, to you." Cole spun, anger sparking in his eyes though his hands shook. "I didn't come here for this." "No," she said, lifting the revolver higher, her arms unwavering. "But you came, and fate never asks what we come for." The lantern guttered, almost dying, before flaring back. Shadows stretched high across the ceiling, swallowing the room in their sway. Cole stood rigid, the widow before him, the gun between them, the weight of history pressing down like desert stone. Her words fell low, like a vow. "At dawn, the town will hear. And you, Cole Everett, will choose whether to stand as a man or hide as your father's son." The silence, after was thick, final. Cole's chest rose and fell, ragged, his gaze locked to the revolver. His lips parted, but the words stayed trapped, choking. The wind outside carried dust across the yard, the shutters groaning with every gust. Inside, the only sound was the clock's endless ticking, marking the space between truth and denial, between night and the judgment waiting at dawn. The first light of dawn cracked over the ridge, painting the town's main street in blood-red glow. Boots shuffled on dry dust, voices hushed, the crowd gathering in silence. The air was tight, heavy, as though the desert itself held its breath. Clara Danning stepped into the street, black dress trailing behind, veil lifted back, her face bare to the rising sun. The revolver rested in her hand, not raised, not hidden, just carried with the weight of a truth too long buried. Across from her, Cole Everett stood pale, his hat pulled low though it could not hide the fear tightening his jaw. He looked smaller than he had in the saloon, stripped of swagger, the dust on his boots heavier than gold ever weighed. The townsfolk murmured, eyes darting between them. A child clutched his mother's skirt. Old men spat tobacco into the dirt, their mouths drawn tight. Whispers hissed through the crowd. Everett, the widow, a reckoning. The sheriff leaned against a post, hand on his belt, but he did not move. Justice here was older than his badge, and every man knew it. Clara's voice carried clear, cutting through the morning stillness. This street was built on stolen ground. My husband's blood lies beneath it. For years, silence was the only law. But silence ends today. Her eyes locked on Cole, sharp and unyielding. Speak, or stand damned. Cole's breath fogged, faint in the chill. He shifted, boots grinding grit beneath him, his hands twitching near his belt though no gun rested there. He swallowed, his throat working hard against words that clawed to stay buried. The crowd pressed closer. The weight of 100 eyes bore down, the air crackling with expectation. Clara lifted the revolver, not aimed to kill, but steady, held like an oath. The metal glinted sharp in the dawn light. Confess. Cole's chest heaved, sweat sliding cold across his temple. His lips parted, voice hoarse. It wasn't me. Your father, Clara said, her tone flat as iron. Yes. The word fell broken, but it carried. The crowd shifted, gasps rippling like wind through dry grass. Cole's knees bent as if the truth itself pressed him down. His voice rose, rough, desperate. My father, he sent men, for land that wasn't his. They shot her husband dead, and we've lived off the blood of that day ever since. The townsfolk stirred, some muttering curses, others nodding slow, as if pieces long hidden clicked into place. The old men lowered their eyes. The sheriff straightened, his hands slipping from his belt, shame weighing his shoulders. Clara did not move. The revolver stayed raised, her eyes fixed on Cole. Say his name. Cole's voice cracked. Thomas Danning. Your husband. Killed without mercy. By my blood. The silence that followed was thick, final. The town breathed it in, the truth settling heavy on every chest. Cole's head hung, his shoulders slumped, the weight of generations dragging him low. Clara lowered the revolver at last, her hand steady. She turned, her gaze sweeping over the gathered faces. Justice doesn't always ride with a badge. Sometimes it waits, patient as a widow, until the truth walks out in daylight. The crowd held still, their eyes shining, their silence carrying more weight than any cheer. They had heard. They would remember. Cole sank to his knees in the dust, hat falling, his voice gone. The Everett name lay broken at his feet, stripped of its pride, left raw in the open sun. Clara slid the revolver back into its cloth, folding it gentle as if laying a body to rest. She walked past Cole without a glance, her steps steady, her veil trailing dark against the morning light. The people parted for her, silent, respectful, their faces turned as she passed. No one stopped her. No one dared. The old clock in the saloon struck, its chime rolling out into the street, a toll for the end of lies. Cole knelt alone, dust rising with each trembling breath. No one helped him. No one spoke his name. And as Clara Danning vanished down the street, the tale was already weaving itself into legend. So remember, when the canyon winds howl at dusk, the old storyteller's voice lingers, soft as the desert night, that justice may come not with bullets, but with truth carried in a widow's hand. And that Cole Everett, rich rancher and proud fool, once knelt in dust while Clara Danning walked away a legend.